We're ready when you are, Dr. Hidaji.
Good morning, everyone. We are now live today for our event. Thank you so much for joining us for the American Academy of Pediatrics Nevada Chapter Virtual Walk with the Doc Kids Time. I'd like to welcome all of our parents, kids, and fellow practitioners to our July virtual walk. My name is Dr. Lily Hidaji, and I'm a pediatrician here in Las Vegas, as well as the Nevada AAP Chapter Walk with the Doc coordinator. So for 5 years now, the Nevada AAP chapter has been meeting every second Sunday of every month. We enjoy coordinating kid-friendly talks on a variety of different pediatric health topics, and then enjoy an outdoor walk together. So it's a great way to get outdoors, learn important information about the health of our kids, and have the opportunity to ask a local pediatrician or pediatric specialist any questions that we may have. Our chapter also helps coordinate this event for the Reno community. So we normally join at the Springs Preserve's outdoor venue most of the year. And during the hotter months, we like to gather at the Mount Charleston Visitor Gateway to escape the heat. So since we're keeping our distance to protect ourselves and our community from this pandemic, we're holding a virtual walk with the doc this morning, live streamed online. For our talk today, we are very happy to welcome Dr. Stephen Shane, who will be speaking to us about the importance of food and drink recommendations in our kids. Dr. Shane has been a pediatrician for 30 years now and practicing primary care at Community Health Alliance in Nevada, in Reno, Nevada. He has a special interest in the prevention of treatment of obesity and directs the Healthy Living program for children at Community Health Alliance. He also recently became board certified in obesity medicine, so we're really excited to have him speak with us today. As Dr. Shane starts his talk, I really encourage all of you to use the chat box to talk to each other and also ask any questions that he can answer at the end of his talk. So Dr. Shane, we are ready when you are.
Great. Thank you, Lily, for the introduction. I'm glad I could be here today, and I'm glad everybody who's signed in can join, and hopefully I can impart some practical information that you could use at home on a daily basis to keep not only your children healthy, but yourselves as well, the entire family. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So I can use some slides here to kind of impart the information I'd like to share with you today. So this is actually the link that is in the flyer for the program, and you'll have access to all of this information later online once this presentation is over. But this is from the healthychildren.org website, which is, if all of you are not aware of it, it is a wonderful resource provided by the American Academy of Pediatrics, which is great for families and children. I use it all the time to look information up for myself and also to provide information to my families in my clinic. But this link is in regard to the topic that we're covering today, as far as food intake and as well as drink or beverage intake. And it's a lot of detailed information. And I think it's obviously it's something that you really can't use on a daily basis, but I think it's good if you're interested in knowing kind of roughly what your child's or even your own caloric intake should be based on your activity level. And hopefully most of you are trying to be at least moderately active or active, just to kind of give you a ballpark feel for where you should be. And, you know, and if you're really dedicated, sometimes it may not hurt to maybe even track your caloric intake or your child's caloric intake for 1, 2, 3 days, and there are some good apps that you can use to do this. But obviously, I wouldn't recommend for most people to be doing this on a daily basis because it is tedious, and you probably won't be able to sustain it for very long. The next table on that same page, I think, is very useful in regard to kind of giving you an idea for portion size based on food group. Again, this is something you're not going to probably use on a daily basis, but it might be a good exercise to even go through this with your kids and, you know, kind of visually see what portion sizes should actually be based on recommendations with a measuring cup. And I always encourage people to do this with common foods that they eat based on label information, because sometimes labels give portion sizes which are probably not really in line with what's recommended based on you know, current science and what's recommended here. But you know, I think whenever I've done this before with families, I think people are often very surprised to see that, you know, what they think is a portion size is a lot bigger than what's on a food label and also in a table such as this. And this just gives some more information in regard to portion sizes and some, you know, some ideas based on some common foods that we all consume based on age and obviously food type. What I'd like to do is now kind of go through some information that's going to be more, I think, easy to use, more feasible on a daily basis, and try to simplify it a bit, because obviously if things are more simplified in our busy, crazy lives, we're more likely to be able to execute those actions and develop some good lifestyle habits to keep ourselves healthy. In my clinic, we've been using the 5210 messaging from the Let's Go program from the state of Maine for about 6 years now. And we've actually developed a county-wide program prior to the COVID pandemic called 5210 Healthy Washout. And prior to that, we were using that. This was our major messaging in the clinic, which highlights 4 very important behaviors that can keep us all healthier. And each one of these behaviors, represented by each of these numbers, 5210, are geared towards preventing long-term illness. And also, all of these are associated with having healthier weight, which we all would like to have. So the 5 is for 5 or more fruits and vegetables, or portions of vegetables each day. And I like this because it really emphasizes the importance of a more plant-based diet, which we know from science and research that this is associated with decreased risk for very common illnesses that we see in all around us and in many of our family members. So diabetes, heart disease, obesity, cancer. And then 2 is for recreational screen time. I know we've had, you know, most of us have had a lot more screen time over the last year plus because of the COVID pandemic, and certainly a lot more educational screen time. But this really is in reference to non-educational, non-productive screen time. So video games, TikTok, YouTube, and so forth. So really, we want to try to limit the time that we're on screens when we should be doing other things that are more important and healthier for us, like being outside and playing, participating in sports, doing our homework, developing good sleep habits and getting adequate sleep. The 1 is for at least 1 hour or more physical activity. And this is recommended for kids of all ages. And I think it's good for we adults as well. And this should be moderate physical activity. So it should be the kind of activity where, you know, your kids are starting to breathe a little heavy, sweat, maybe increased heart rate. Vigorous activity would be perhaps in a competitive sport contest or game where you're, you know, really going all out and you're actually having difficulty talking. But moderate physical activity, you may be starting to have a little bit of difficulty with speaking in sentences, but still can speak very easily. And it's obviously is very important for, healthy bones, muscles, metabolism, mental health, sleeping better. Physical activity is, probably one of the cheapest medicines that we have. And then 0 is for sugary drinks. We want to try to stay away from sugary drinks. Water is the number one component in our bodies. About 2/3 of our body are composed of water. And about half of the sugar consumption that kids get in this country is from sugar in their drinks. And sugar is not necessary for us to consume. Our bodies can make sugar if we need it. And we do need it, but we don't need extra sugar. Extra sugar provides what we call empty calories, so calories that are not necessary for healthy growth and metabolism. And those sugar calories usually get converted, if they're not used immediately, into additional body fat, which is obviously not good for our long-term health. And then obviously, we'll talk more about dairy or low-fat dairy, and that's another drink that we do recommend, but obviously staying away from drinks with added sugar, or even juice, which I'll talk about in a moment, is currently not strongly recommended. And this is just a flyer of the Healthy Living program that Lily had mentioned that I direct at Community Health Alliance. And this is a program that we run in our clinic to help individuals that we see, primarily families, to be healthier, and if they're having difficulty with extra weight, to hopefully improve their weight status and their total health status. So other good information in regard to determining those portions that we talked about from those tables that I showed you at the very beginning of my presentation. This is, there's much easier ways to kind of get a rough idea of what portion sizes should be, using some common objects, particularly our hands. Hands are great. And you want to use the hands of the person that you're determining the portion for. So if you're preparing a meal for your 5-year-old, you want to use their hand and not your hand. But the size of your fist, or what you can carry or hold in your hand, is a good measuring device. Determine a lot of portion sizes for a lot of foods, such as fruits and vegetables, grains, cereal, and so forth. A deck of playing cards, or the size of the palm of your hand, is good for determining a size of a piece of meat, such as fish, beef, pork, or chicken. And then using a ping pong ball size for salad dressing, peanut butter, almond butter, or you could even use your thumb. So obviously your hands are, always with you, hopefully. And particularly if you're, out at a friend's house, or at a party, at a restaurant, you could always use your hands as, quick measuring sticks for what a healthy portion is based on your size. That last graphic and also this graphic are from the Let's Go organization, and I'll show you their website here momentarily, because there's a lot of good information in addition to this that's accessible to anyone and printable with free PDFs in English and Spanish. So I like this page because, one, it shows the My Plate graphic, which probably most of you, if not all of you, have seen before. And I like it because it's very simple, and it shows you that your plate, the objective is to have half your plate filled with fruits and vegetables, and then a quarter of your plate with grains, hopefully whole grains, like whole grain rice, or whole grain pasta, or even vegetable pasta if you're having pasta, and then healthy protein. And obviously we prefer lean protein, such as fish, like salmon, cod, tuna, poultry, turkey, chicken, trying to limit protein from red meats like pork, lamb, and beef to no more than 1 or 2 times a week, to minimize saturated fat in our diet. And then obviously for dairy, and we usually recommend low-fat dairy, so yogurt, cheese, milk, and so forth. So, and myplate.gov is an excellent resource for families to go to get nutritional information, and also healthy recipes and fun activities for kids to help learn about healthy habits. And there's some other good habits that are listed on this page, such as sitting at the table with your family. You shouldn't be watching a movie or looking at your tablet or your phone while you're eating. You want to be focused on eating and focused on your family. It's good bonding time for the family. And when you're not focused on what you're eating, we typically tend to overeat. You're watching a video, and then before you know it, you look down and your plate's empty. So we want you to be enjoying your food. And when you enjoy your food and really appreciate it, talking to your family, you eat slower and you tend not to overeat, which is obviously something that, we all do at times, including myself. Use smaller plates instead of larger plates. This helps limit portion sizes. And also I think it kind of psychologically makes you feel like you're eating more than you really are. Making sure that food is not extra food is not on the table, making it easier to access. It's good to have it on the countertop or the stove, because obviously when food is right in front of you and you can see it, it's so easy to, particularly if you're really hungry, to get more food than you really need. And the same goes for when you go to restaurants. If you get, we know how restaurant portions are. They're typically quite large. Sometimes it's best to ask for a to-go container before you even get started, and just put half of the meal into the to-go container, and know you're going to have that maybe for another meal later on in the day or the next day. And it's always good to start with smaller portions. Don't emphasize the need to clean your plate. You want your kids to have healthy options provided, and let their bodies know how much they need to feel full, and also to fulfill their needs for healthy growth and metabolism. And lastly, you want to be good role models. As parents, we know, kids, they learn everything from us. So you got to be a good example. You can't be at the dinner table drinking a soda or Arizona iced tea and then telling the kids that, they can't have soda, they have to drink water. You got to walk the talk. And then lastly, in regard to the 0 and the 5210 message, in regard to more detail on what to drink, as I mentioned, water is what we recommend most as pediatricians. It should be your primary drink of choice. And water can be you can start offering water to kids as low as 6 months of age. Up until that point, they're getting really all their water needs from their formula or their breast milk, hopefully breast milk. But you can start off with a few ounces a day, particularly in the warmer months. And then kids 1 to 3 years of age need about 4 cups or 32 ounces of total water per day. So that include low-fat milk and water. And then obviously for older kids, that can go up to 5 cups a day, and then 7, 8 cups for older children. Teenagers can, you can go up to 8 to 10, 10 to 12. And the important thing to know is everybody's different in regard to how much water they need. It's going to be based on where you live, what your body size is, what your activity level is. So I think the key is to always have water with meals. Always carry one of these around with you, which I try to make a habit of me, because living here in Nevada, if you're not constantly drinking water, you're gonna get dehydrated. And I tell people to look at their pee. If your pee is clear or a light yellow, you're probably adequately hydrated. And there's a lot of fun ways to flavor your water in a healthy fashion. So using fresh fruit infused waters, or using vegetables like jicama or cucumber. Rethink Your Drink Nevada. I didn't put up one of their tables or websites in this talk, but Rethink Your Drink Nevada is out of the cooperative extension from the University of Nevada, and they promote healthy recipes with flavored water, but not using added sugar, and trying to keep kids from using beverages that have added sugar. And the things that I've already mentioned in regard to what to limit, we've already talked about sugary drinks. And this includes juice. Even 100% fruit juice has a lot of sugar. Sometimes 100% fruit juice has more sugar per volume than soda. And we know that the natural sugar that comes in of fruit that juice is made for is going to be processed and metabolized much better in our bodies when we can consume that sugar in the fruit, when you eat the whole fruit. So when you're eating all that fibrous material that the fruit provides, typically that's considered healthy and we don't worry about that. But when you're having just the juice without all that fibrous material that comes along with the fruit, all that sugar is processed just basically like if you're drinking a soda or an Arizona iced tea. So we typically recommend, and these are the guidelines from the American Academy of Pediatrics, or no juice in the first year. And if you're going to offer any 100% fruit juice, limit it to 2 to 4 ounces a day for 1 to 3 year olds. And then for 4 to 6 year olds, no more than 4 to 6 ounces. And then above 6 years of age, no more than 8 ounces a day. But certainly 100% fruit juice is not something we recommend. And then people often ask about flavored milk, which is unfortunately offered in, I know in the Washoe County School District. I'm not sure about other school districts like the Clark County School District, but this is currently done because it's thought that it improves milk consumption in regard to kids getting adequate calcium and vitamin D in their diets. But these come with a cost of added sugar. So certainly I do not advocate these. Unfortunately at school, you know, kids, when they're offered flavored milk, they usually go for it. So you try to control what you can control. So obviously flavored milk in the home is something that you can try to eliminate or minimize. And then always the topic that often comes up are artificial sweeteners. And there's a lot of artificial sweeteners out there nowadays, including aspartame or NutraSweet, stevia, and more are coming onto the market and being used by manufacturers like sucralose and others all the time. And I usually try to not recommend these because in the current state or guidelines from the American Academy of Pediatrics is to stay away from these sweeteners because we do not know what they do to our bodies in the long term. And also there's a lot of studies and clinical research that shows that they typically do not help us lose weight if we're trying to lose weight. And they actually may lead to increased weight gain because some of them may actually be metabolized in our bodies just like sugar. And also it continues to train our brains to want sweet things, sugary things. So the only time I recommend these are when people are trying to reduce their added sugar consumption and maybe kind of as a temporary transitional step in trying to get off of all sweetened beverages. And this is the Let's Go website. So again, as I mentioned earlier, this is the organization that created the 5210 messaging, which the AAP does promote. And there's a lot of good information here under tools, a lot of good handouts for parents and providers. And this is what we've been using at my health center for a number of years. And it's been, I think, very, very productive and very helpful because it's easy to remember. And this is a nice, I'm going to finish up with this questionnaire. This is from Let's Go. And we use this with all of our checkups, all of our well child checkups. This is for ages 2 to 9. And then there's one for 10 years and older. And this comes in Spanish as well, because most of my patients are primary Spanish speakers. And this basically allows parents and their kids to assess their current healthy habits. And it's more than just the 5210 behaviors, but it also talks about things like Do you eat breakfast every day? How often are you eating restaurant or takeout food? How many hours of sleep do you get each night? And it allows you at the last item to do some goal setting. So maybe picking one or two things that you think you could do better. And you could actually use this as a tool, or even like a healthy habits, healthy lifestyle prescription that you can send home with families, so they can maybe improve their overall health in the household. And on the back, there's some very nice tips for parents and families to use too, to try to meet the 5210 behaviors. And I just want to finish with in regard to item 4 about takeout food, I didn't mention at all thus far, is looking at, how much processed food that you're consuming in your household and with your kids, because the more processed food, the more calories that are available to your body that are unnecessary. So it's good to think about trying to eat as much real food as possible. I know it's difficult, easier said than done when you're running around with your kids to different activities, picking them up from school. Sometimes when you're tired, you need an easy fix, but as much as possible, try to focus on real food, because we know real food is healthier for us, and also is linked with lower risk for some of the chronic illnesses that we've already mentioned earlier in the presentation, including diabetes, obesity, heart disease, and cancer. So that's all I wanted to present this morning, and I'm open to take any questions that we may have.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Shane. That was super informative. We do have a few questions for you. So the first being, do you recommend children take vitamins or any other supplements daily?
That's a difficult one. There is no research or science that shows that taking vitamins or natural supplements improve our overall health, and it goes for any age, so kids, adults. Obviously, if you have a health condition that may require a specific supplement, that's a different situation, and that's something you should discuss with your healthcare provider. I usually don't discourage, if families are giving multivitamins to their kids. I don't discourage it. I don't think there's any information that shows that it's harmful. And I think, I know with my families, I see a lot of families who are struggling economically and who may not be getting all the nutrition that I would like them to get. And I think probably there's a lot more focus on things such as calcium and vitamin D, and people getting enough vitamin D, particularly when people have been inside a lot more over the last year plus. And multivitamins do contain vitamin D, but I think when possible, you really want to focus on just a well-balanced, healthy diet, and you should be getting all your minerals and vitamins from that, if you can, follow a nice, healthy, well-balanced diet.
Okay, thank you very much for that. The next question for you, Dr. Shane, is, do you recommend Pediasure or any other nutritional supplements in kids?
Well, that's a good question, because I'm sure Dr. Hadaji, you and as well as myself, I see a lot of patients who come in and their parents are buying, they're at Walmart or Costco or whatever, and buying cases of Pediasure because their kids are, not eating as much as they think they should be eating. And then obviously there's a lot of good marketing from these companies touting the nutritional, and it really goes, it's really like a vitamin or a nutritional supplement. There's not any good research that shows that a healthy child needs to have Pediasure. And I find in a lot of situations, kids are drinking Pediasure every day and they're gaining excessive amounts of weight because it's, again, I look at it as a processed food. And again, as I just mentioned, eating real food is a lot healthier. And, these quick fixes, drinking your food in a bottle of Pediasure, unless you have a medical condition. And again, this is something, would be a specific situation that you would discuss with your care provider. Otherwise, it could lead to more harm than good, just like any sort of nutritional supplement.
Thank you. I definitely agree with you on that. The next question, Dr. Shane, what do you do with kids that are really picky, who don't want to eat enough quantity of foods, or certain types of foods they're averse to? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, that's a common parental concern. It's something you deal with, at least once a day, if not more, in a pediatric practice. And I think, probably, early on during infancy, I think it's so important to, provide healthy options to your children, from the get-go when you start solid foods. So, first foods should be vegetables and fruits. A lot of people say we should offer vegetables first, just because of, less natural sugar and less sweetness, to get kids used to eating a lot of vegetables early on. And I think, that needs to continue. You need to continue with always offering healthy choices. I think what happens for a lot of kids is, again, going back to, being in our busy, chaotic lives, we fall back to a lot of processed foods, and a lot of foods that our kids find out about, and we find out about by, marketing and advertising. And then you kind of get into you develop these habits that are hard to break. So I think, one, trying to develop good, well-rounded palate of food, starting into infancy and continuing with that as much as possible in early childhood. Other things to consider would be, taking your kids to the farmer's market, to the grocery store, and having them participate in selecting the foods that they want to eat, particularly in the fruits and vegetable, in the produce section. The more they can participate in preparation of meals, and even growing fruits and vegetables at home if possible, or in school gardens, that is, has been shown to improve fruit and vegetable consumption. And, selling fruits and vegetables. We're talking about, describing how, good something tastes, or how crunchy it is, how juicy it is, trying different methods for preparation. If one method is not likable, cutting fruits and vegetables up into funny shapes, giving them funny names, whatever it takes to, you basically have to be a good salesperson when it comes to those foods. And I think, only offering healthy options, don't offer vegetables and then something not so healthy. Kids are not going to starve to death if you provide healthy options and they don't like anything. If they're hungry, they need the food, they're eventually going to eat what you provide to them. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you. That definitely helps. The next couple questions are off topic, but just as important. So the first one being, do you recommend, Dr. Shane, a melatonin in a 3-year-old, or is there an age range that you would recommend that?
Well, gosh, I think myself, and I'm sure probably most primary care providers over this past year have been recommending and discussing melatonin a lot. I've even tried it myself over the past year. The current thought is that melatonin is safe, and even in infants, small doses. In young kids, school age kids, I think the current guidelines or recommendations from experts is trying to stick to 1 to 3 milligrams a night, sometimes going up to 5 milligrams. In normally healthy kids. There's probably some certain situations where you would go higher, but I think for most kids, 1 to 3 milligrams can be effective for a lot of them. And I think, obviously first you want to try to establish good sleep hygiene or sleep routines. But I know, unfortunately, with a lot of our lives, particularly when have parents who are working um, graveyard shifts or swing shifts, you've got parents working, opposite of one another, or kids, going from one family member to another family member's house. It's easier said than done, but obviously do the best you can with sleep hygiene or sleep routines first. But I think melatonin is a safe option to consider. And you may only have to use a translate. I think there's a lot of kids over this past year that really got their wake sleep cycles disturbed with distance learning, and a lot of them just needed a little transient, temporary help in trying to reset their normal wake sleep rhythm and cycle.
Okay, great. Thank you. Last question for you, Dr. Shane, is do you recommend or can the COVID vaccine be co-administered?
Initially it was recommended that the COVID vaccine, specifically Pfizer, which is the only one approved for use in individuals under 18 years of age, be separated by at least 14 days by other regular vaccinations. But there's been some recent updates to that recommendation, and currently it is safe to not worry about that timing. And you could also even give other vaccines along with the COVID vaccine. You do want to try to, if you can, use different extremities, or at least separate the injection site by at least an inch or more from other vaccines. This is based on, accumulated knowledge demonstrating that there hasn't been any increased risk. We still don't know exactly how the COVID vaccine or other vaccines may affect the immunogenicity, or how it improves our immunity to COVID, or vice versa with the COVID vaccine affecting other vaccines. But if it potentially means a child becoming behind in their vaccines, or completely missing them, not coming back, I think it's probably better just to give any vaccines that are due at the time of a visit, and not worry about the timing of the COVID vaccine. Certainly as a parent, if you know that you are going to get back to your provider or wherever you get your vaccinations, for instance, 14 days after the COVID vaccine or before, and you feel more comfortable doing that, I think that's fine. I think it's just a judgment call that has to be made, in the doctor's office or in the clinic, to make sure everyone stays current with their vaccines, particularly, before school starting in August.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shane. That is all of our questions we have for you. And we want to thank you very much for your informative talk on food and drink recommendations in kids. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. So it's time now for us all to go on our outdoor walk. So we're going to stop our live feed, and I really encourage everyone to take the time to enjoy some physical activity outside. Hopefully finding a time today that's a little bit cooler.
And some fruit.
Yes. And I know we have some members driving up to Mount Charleston area, which will be definitely cooler today. But it would be great to see any photos of yourselves walking together that can be posted on the Nevada AAP Twitter feed at AAP Nevada. Make sure everyone you walk for at least 20 minutes, bring lots of water and sunscreen, maintain your social distancing, and wear a mask. We are keeping up to date on the latest recommendations from the CDC and the American Academy of Pediatrics, and we will let you all know when it is safe to resume our in-person walks. Please make sure to also take your kids 12 and older for their COVID vaccinations and get them up to date with their regular vaccinations if they're behind. And for kids 12 and under, check with your pediatrician to ensure they are all up to date on their childhood immunizations. So our next virtual walk with a dog will be held August 8th at 10 a.m. and we hope to see everyone there again. Please stay safe and healthy and have a great walk. Thank you, everyone.